Hi everyone, Megan here from Romance by the Book with the lovely Marielle.
Hello.
This is week 2 for February's book of the month, Pardon My Frenchie by Farrah Rochon. So cute. Love that
It
cover.
is cute.
So we pick up with Ashanti calling the real estate agent about the dream place that she wants to buy. But she
She
feels
didn't
pretty
listen to our last one. She has been threatened into
yes,
doing it right now. So she's
by her best friend, yes. So, but she feels pretty dejected because it is outside her price range, which is what she was afraid of. And Ridley
the
pops
asking price is outside her price range. And they're like, we're pretty sure it's gonna go for more because
over.
already people have been um offering
Yeah,
above what the asking
above
price
asking
is. So
price. Yeah.
she's just like, "Ugh."
So Ridley pops into the office. She canceled her meeting to come there to make sure that Ashanti followed through with her promise. And she's like, you cannot give up on this. Like, this is your dream place. Like, do not give up. And so she's like, you can get a loan. You have a house. You have a business. Like, you have collateral. Like, this is not, what are you talking about? Like, you can do this, you know? Going into that much debt freaks
She
her out, but like, people do it every day, especially for a business. It's one thing to take out a loan for something, that you're not sure you can
like
handle.
saying like you've got your house that could be collateral, and she's like, I'm not putting like my parents' house up for collateral. Like that's just not a thing. The other thing is that the
She's
twins are
horrified
about
at
to
the
go to
idea of it.
college. And she's like, my parents made sure that I could go to college and not be like in
In
debt
debt.
after. I'm not going to like saddle these girls with student loans. I just couldn't. Like,
Yeah.
so she's got valid reasons for her, but Ridley, her friend, is like,
She's not hearing
look,
it.
you
She's
you
like, this is what
cannot,
you, well, and she's like, this is what you do. Like, you come up with reasons why you can't do a thing, and you need to do this. Like, this is what you need to do.
but it's almost like she is not opting out, but she's like taking herself out of the running
Yeah.
before she even. The
Like,
good
tries.
news is that they are not like accepting or starting to accept any kind of like,
Bids or
or not
whatever.
orders, but bids until Monday. So she's like got some time
She's got the weekend to
to
figure
get
it out.
her ducks in a row. But her friend is, I mean, this is a good friend, I feel
Yeah.
like, because she's like not letting her do the thing
Yeah.
that's
That
going to
she
keep
always
her
does.
small. Like
Yeah.
she's like, you grow this thing and you can do it.
And she asks her at this point, I think, like, do you even know what this business is worth? Like, have you ever had it evaluated?
He
And she's
said,
like,
when is the
no.
last time? And it's
And she's
never.
like,
The
never.
answer is
Yeah.
never.
And so Ridley's like, okay, like, we're going to do this, right? So later on that night, Thad is late picking up Puddin. He apologizes. He promises it won't happen again. It's like 15 minutes after 8 or something. So it's already aftercare, and then he's late for that too.
He
Um,
like the thing that's funny is that her first reaction is to be like, "Oh, I hope nothing has happened to him." But when she leaves the message, she's like, "So the
it's
time
this
was eight
time. Yep.
o'clock. It's now eight, like 14 or whatever. We will be charging you the $90." Like at this
To
point, I'm
board her,
assuming he's
board
staying
him. Yeah.
overnight. We're gonna charge you like the emergency boarding, like I think it's $90 fee
Yeah.
or something. And he immediately calls back.
It's like, I'm on my way. I'm so sorry. Like, please don't charge me that money.
He's like, I'll be there in 10, and then he's there in
He's there
5.
in
Like
5. Yeah. So, and he does actually, like, before when he was apologizing for his behavior, it was like he didn't actually say, I'm sorry. He said a thing that sort of sounded like, I'm sorry. This time he actually was like, I'm sorry. Like, it won't happen again.
He had
Um,
set an alarm on his phone, and when we were like in his point of view, when he was like, I'm gonna have to do these things so that I
right.
don't miss my time.
Yeah.
But he left his phone in the glove box in his truck.
And
So
so he didn't know what time it was and he got lost. Yeah. So that night Thad and Vaughn go check out the competition is what Vaughn is calling it at this bar. Um Vaughn disappears with a woman pretty quickly after they get there and Thad is like turning women down left and right. He's not into this.
he's trying to not make eye contact. Like he's just kind of like, I don't
He's like, this is clearly a
that's
pickup
not what I'm
bar and
here
I'm not
for.
into this.
But also, like, he seems overstimulated. Like,
Yeah,
he's just like, this place is real loud. There's so
too
many
much.
people here. The bartender, I guess, says to him, like, yeah, you should see this on the weekend. And
Right.
he's like, how could they not be
How can you
breaking the
fit more
fire
people in
code?
here? But he does talk to the bartender a little more, who is also a fellow vet, about his plans. And the bartender's like, I actually really like it here, but like, I'd love to come work for you guys if once you open or
He's like,
whatever.
if you need help when you first start, let me know. I'll help you out. So
Yeah.
even like it's really kind of sweet.
Yeah. And so back at the house, him and Vaughn talk about moving forward with a contractor. They've gotten a couple of quotes, but it's more than they wanted to spend. But this house needs a lot more work than they realized, and like it's just a thing that has to happen, basically. Um,
Did buy it. It was interesting. Like they were able to buy it quickly because they had like a cash offer, but also they had agreed, and we're told
forego an
this when
inspection.
Ashanti came. He was like, yeah, we just bought it like without the inspection and
Right, like they
with the
gave him another
cash that
5% off or something to forego an inspection, and like clearly that was not a good idea.
there's reasons why he
Yeah,
could see they're knocking down the walls, and I think it's at this point that somebody's like, oh wow, you've done a lot, and he goes, well, it turns out the walls aren't that hard to knock down when they're
when
like
they're
rotting
rotting.
from the inside. I'm like, oh, that
It's real
sounds
bad.
bad.
So the daycare is still off the charts busy. Ashanti is home though, baking again and trying to get Kendra talking to her, which is still not happening. It's clearly to do with school, but beyond that, she can't get the info out of her. Um, Later, Kara bursts in again, saying that she entered the daycare into this like young entrepreneur contest, like young black female entrepreneur contest.
The thing that's funny is the first time we like see Kara come in during school,
Hmm.
she's like, "Oh, it's lunch," and so this
Right.
time
It's like the morning.
Ashanti's like, "Why are you in school? And don't tell me it's lunch because it's like 2 hours before
Right.
it's your lunch period." And she's like, "No, I'm definitely skipping, but I needed to tell you this in person." And I'm
Yeah.
like, "This girl."
It's
Anyway,
so the prize for this contest is like $250,000 and mentoring from an expert basically, and a loan program that has way better terms than any bank or anything, and it would be like pretty
also,
much
you
what she
could
needs.
get a loan that's 2 million, up to $2 million, but
Yeah,
she's like, that is what I
that's what
would
I
need
need
to
for the
buy this
house.
house.
Yeah. And it has yeah, like better terms than the bank. And so she's pretty excited about it.
Well, the repayment terms are based on how much they're making,
Right.
like how much the
As opposed
business
to
is
like a set
making.
amount per month or whatever. Yeah.
So she feels a lot more comfortable doing something like that than she would
Right.
getting a loan from the
And
bank.
then a national morning news show calls her and wants the dogs to be on the show. So she again calls her friends to talk it out, figure out what this would entail. Can she do it? Can she be away from baking for 3 days in New York, Um, and so Ridley decides to call her friend Dom, who's like a PR specialist, to help set up other events they can do while they're there to like really maximize their time in New York. Um,
Because the contest is national, like it's open, people have to vote for the winning like business,
right.
and um it's a national contest, so
Yeah.
votes can come in nationally. So if they're thinking like
Right. So
multi-prong
that could help with
approach,
that
like
too. Yeah. But first, she has to call Thad and convince him to go on the trip. So, Ashanti decides to go talk to him in person. So she goes to the house. She convinces him it'll be good for both their businesses. He can start posting videos now on social media of them like doing the renovations and like get people excited about it. Vaughn is all for him going. Like he's very into the idea. Um,
they have to go like immediately too. So it's there's
Right, like
not
they would have to
really
leave the next morning. And so Thad like reluctantly agrees. And in the morning they take Puddin to go visit his grandma and let her know that like where they're going and what they're doing. And she's of course tickled by this. She's very excited.
so
Um,
she's like, "Are you guys sharing a hotel room?" And they're like, "What? Excuse me, no."
I wrote in my notes,
What?
she's so excited. She wants them to share a hotel room in New York City. And they're like, no, like that's not, this is a work trip, right? So they then they go to a meeting over at Ridley's house with the PR person and they get their itinerary and their plans and all that, and then they go home to pack. His sister calls to give him a hard time about not telling them right away about, you know, the trip, and then also like he didn't tell his grandma about the morning news show, the local news show, and she found out about it later and she was like big mad about it. Um and of course his sister, is always going to call and give him a hard time. So at the airport,
At that point, he considers telling his sister about the emails that he's been getting from this
right,
lady because Vaughn convinced him to like reply and just kind of see what her
right,
deal
like does she want
was.
money? Does she like what
And
is this about? Yeah,
and the lady has not yet. So he's like
right.
waiting for
He
her
keeps
to like
replying.
ask for
Yeah,
something and she hasn't yet.
she
So
hasn't yet.
he's kind of like, I'll tell her she's gonna come for like a wedding, a
Her
family
best friend's
event.
wedding pretty soon. Yeah.
And so he's like, I'll just if I stay on the phone, it's gonna be an hour of
Right.
us
And like
talking
I
about
don't have
this, so
time for
I'll
that.
tell her
Yeah.
later.
So he gets to the airport, and they check the dogs and everything, and their banter is like top notch. They both kind of reluctantly agree to like ignore the vibes that are clearly starting to happen between them. Neither of them
She
are
says
really in
something
a
about not of like she says something to him about like his body and he's
yeah.
like and she's like I don't think
Or
about
that
your body that
or
much
that she
like don't
thinks about
flatter
his body,
yourself
whatever, like
and he goes not that much and she's just like okay look like I'm gonna forget that you because there is a moment earlier where she says you're not my type because my type
my
is a
type
dog but like
likes
has to be a
dogs.
dog person
Yeah.
and he's like so if I learn to like dog but then he stops
He's
himself
like, never mind,
and so
forget it.
she's like I'll forget what you almost asked me if you forget all about this
What I
and
just said. Yeah. And he
he
doesn't really want
agrees
to.
but
Like he's
no.
starting to really like feel her and he doesn't really want to do that, but he agrees that he will forget about it. Neither of them are really in a place right now to start a relationship. They both have a lot going on. And of course
He's
many
kind
people
of
in the
like, if this is what you really want to do, and she in
right,
her head is like, I mean, want, but okay, like,
right, I don't really want to, but I need to, right? So a lot of people in the airport like recognize them and that kind of throws them for a loop, which is funny. They recognize them even when they don't have the dogs with them. Like they've already checked the dogs. They come in the gate and like people still know who they are. Um, and so in New York, they do a podcast spot, which is like kind of a corny, like little dog podcast, basically. And Thad is like, please tell me the morning show is not going to be like this. Like I
also
can keep a
it's an
straight
hour
face.
long, and when they get there, they're like, oh, these doggies are so popular that we're going to do like a live stream
Like actual
of
video,
the
not just podcast, which Ashanti, of course, gets nervous when she's on film or whatever.
and she does
Um,
no, she does okay.
she does.
That on the other hand, so when they get out
She's
of
very
there,
surly, as usual.
they do get feedback from their friends immediately.
Ridley has
Um,
no problem calling them on their shit.
And
It
before
is
she
very
left,
funny.
we should mention that before she left, her friends were also like, as much as his grandma was like, "Are you sharing a room?" Her friends were like,
Please,
"I
God, sleep with this man. Like, you need to do this for yourself. Like, trust us, right? And she's, of course, like,
healthcare."
no, that's not happening.
Um,
So
yeah,
she's
Ridley
getting
is
it from
like,
all
you need to
sides.
figure out how to be like find your Riz because
Yes.
when you're on this TV show tomorrow, you better not be acting like you were
Like that
acting
surly
today.
ass performance you just gave, right? So that night, Thad takes her sightseeing because he's been to New York before and she hasn't. Um, and
Funny because his plan was to like get some Thai food and like sit at home, like sit
in
in the
the
hotel
hotel.
and watch TV. But he fully changes his plan. He
Yes.
thinks she wants to go sightseeing. She wants like a tour
A
of all of
foodie
the
tour.
restaurants that she's been like yeah, she's
Yes,
for
she
a
has
while has been
plans
like if I ever go to New
to
York,
eat all the
I'll eat
things.
these things.
And I mean,
So
same, dude. Like that's what I like to do when I go somewhere too. I loved that. It was really cute. So they walk all over town and they're talking and they're really sort of starting to become friends, which neither of them, I think, expected. And Ashanti tells him about how her parents died. It was honestly brutal. So her mom was a mail carrier and she just dropped dead one day on her route. She had an aneurysm.
yeah.
And that same day, after her dad left the hospital, he got into a car accident and died. And so it was just like a double blow. And her sisters, this was 6 years ago, so they were like 10. And yeah, it was terrible.
So on top of it, she does reveal that they had an insurance
Right.
policy or whatever,
Like life
the like
insurance.
life
Yeah.
insurance, and the life insurance said that he had like because he accidentally ran a red light, but they're like, no, he did it on purpose, and this was a suicide, and it's like
Yeah. No, they were trying
so
to
they
not pay. And so she had to fight all that too. And he tells her about going into the army and, his grandparents and all that stuff. And they keep, of course, having these like moments of like looking at each other, like, is something going to happen? And they're like ignoring them. Well,
She
she's
like wants
ignoring
to
them.
brush the braid off of like her, that's
Yeah.
touching her
Her
face, and
cheek. Yeah.
she's so yeah, it's they're both feeling feelings, but they did decide to ignore, so they're doing their best.
Yes. And people keep stopping them and asking about the dogs and like think that they're a couple, which Ashanti finds hilarious. Um, And later on, when they get back to the hotel, they do kiss. Like she kisses him, but then she backs off because she's too in her head about all the issues in her life and she's like, this just cannot happen. Like, I cannot deal with this. And so they each go in their own rooms and go to bed. Even though she doesn't think she's going to get any sleep because she's like stressed out. So Thad gets woken up before his alarm. Puddin is having some tummy troubles. And the hotel
The 4
bathroom
a.m.
is
tummy
a mess.
troubles.
Yeah. And so he's worried. So he texts her next door and she comes over and she helps clean up and she has like some medicine for the dog because she said, Duchess gets this sometimes too. He's just nervous. He's not at home. It's like, weird situation, whatever. Um,
He describes it. It's kind of fun. It's kind of a fun point of view situation. Like when
yeah.
we're in his head, he's like, "It's a
This is a
massacre. It's
mess. Yeah.
terrible," and then she's like,
She's like, oh, it's not that
"Oh,
bad.
that's not that bad. You'll get used
And
to
he's
this."
like,
And
if
he's
you say
like,
so, right? Yeah. And well, and so then she starts cleaning up and he feels bad. He's like, I can do that. And she's like, it's fine. Like, I'm used to it. And he's like, how do you ever get used to this smell? And she's like, you just do. I don't know what to tell you. And so then she's like, I have 20 minutes till my alarm goes off, so I'm going back to bed. She like takes both the dogs into her room and like closes the door. They have like adjoining doors.
he's
Um,
like, feels slightly left out that she
yeah, no, the
took the
dogs get to
dog.
snuggle up and I'm like stuck over here by myself. So they go to the morning show and they do their segment. It goes really great. Everyone loves the pups, of course. Ridley calls and says, they did wonderful, but she's like, other than that, you were like, I fucking him the entire time. And Ashanti's like, I was what? Like,
I was not.
totally freaked out that and then her sisters text and are like, it looks like you guys are banging it out. And she's like, oh my God, like, what was I doing? Like, how was I looking at him? Right. And it's really funny. Um, and she's horrified, to be honest, but she's like, I mean, I can't do anything about it now.
Yeah.
And then the
When
next
Ridley says it, she's kind of like, no. But then when she gets a second and a third text, she's like,
from her
oh,
sisters, she's like, oh God.
no.
Yeah. So, and later on, uh, she says something to him, and he's like, I mean, I wasn't gonna say anything, and she was like, oh my God, like, what does that mean? Like, what was I doing? It's really funny. And so Ridley also tells them the podcast interview got pushed back, but they have a new event, which is a dog calendar photo shoot, which they are headed to now. And that is the end of this section. So a lot is happening. They're sort of starting to inch together. So we'll see what happens on the rest of their New York trip. We'll see you next week.
Like there's gotta be they already kissed, but
Yes,
there's gotta be more.
for sure.
They're
Yes.
sizzling.
So we will see you next week.
See you then.